hype about Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and other social platforms, online forums are not the first thing that pops into one's mind when they think about the social web. However, forums are actually at the root of social media and networking. Although they aren't touted as much as some of the other social sites, they play a very important role in both the social web and the internet as a whole. What's more, they take a lot of time and effort, just as a company would, since they require both management and revenue streams. And no one knows this better than Patrick O'Keefe, the owner of the iFroggy network and also the author of Managing Online Forums. And he is actually just releasing a new free ebook called Monetizing Online Forums in partnership with Skimlinks that takes his forum experience and knowledge one step further. We're going to bring in Patrick at this time to talk about his new book and the issues involved with it. Thank you for being with us today, Patrick.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Well, first of all, I want you to just really remind our viewers what an important role that online forums play in the internet, because as I said, they are often forgotten. So what do you say to people that don't really see them as valuable as some of the other web properties?
Sure. I think that online forums are a part of the backbone of the social web, and they are where the most meaningful, deepest discussion on the social web takes place. These are communities where people engage around a specific topic or interest, something they're passionate about. And you can look for any topic. Pick a topic, search on Google for that topic in forums, that topic in community. You'll come across a community that exists for that topic, most likely, no matter how obscure, no matter how vague, where people are already discussing that in a very meaningful, very powerful way. And a friend of mine, Jason Falls, recently did a study on the banking industry specifically, and he found that something like 80 or 90% of trackable online conversations around the banking industry happened in forums.
Really?
So that's that's a massive number, and that's not unique to that industry either.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, no matter what the topic is, online forums are out there, and they exist, and they're very active.
That's very interesting. Well, you have been managing forums for years now, and we have talked about the challenges involved several times in the past, but let's now talk about the monetization aspect of it. How do you approach this with forums? I mean, is it a build a community first and then money concept later, or what exactly is involved here?
Well, so with online forums, I mean, not every community needs to monetize. It just doesn't need to happen. But some people, people start communities and forums for all sorts of reasons. It may be a hobby, it may be a part-time thing, and maybe they'd like some money to pay the bills, right? To pay the hosting bill, the domain name, software. Communities that grow and have a lot of traffic take up a lot of resources. Server resources, dedicated servers cost money. And also you have the investment of your time. And managing a large community can become a full-time job. And if it does, then you have to make a choice. Either you can make a living through the community, or the community will suffer. You have to give it away or do something else with it, perhaps even close it, because you have to make that decision to spend that time at your job, providing for your family or for your lifestyle. Right. So, when you decide that you need to monetize your forums, I think that, the most important thing to keep in mind is, and it's something that I struggle with myself and something that I always, I always think about a great deal, is the balance between a positive member experience and the need to generate revenue. So, there are a number of different ways you can monetize a forum, and we talk about those in the book, but you don't necessarily want to use everything, right? You don't want to throw everything on the page. You don't want to throw 100 ads on the page, because when you monetize a community poorly, you can kill that forum. And that's part of the motivation for the book, is to help people do it in the right way, in an appropriate way that respects the community.
Yeah, I want to get into some of those issues in just a minute, but as we have seen with Facebook and Twitter, making money off of these sites is not easy at all. But what is it that makes their situation different from making a forum profitable, or is it really similar?
Well, it's funny. I've managed forums for about 12 years, and back, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, at least, ad networks and advertisers in general were far more skeptical about advertising on a forum because of the, in their view, they can be kind of uncontrolled, right? There's this user-generated content. People are posting things. Even if there's moderation, it happens after the fact. Now, one thing that the social media, boom, if you will, has benefited for forums is that that's changed. The whole web is social. If you decide you're not going to advertise in a space that has user-generated content, that essentially knocks out the meaningful web. So that is quite beneficial, and that brands and ad networks and online advertisers are looking at forums in the context of the social web rather than just as some sort of island that is different from how they used to view more traditional web publications.
Well, in your ebook, you say that people have to be very careful about making money on forums and that they should not push profitability too strongly. So really, let's talk a little bit about the approach. What are the right methods for making it profitable? And really, the fact that ads are not the only way to go.
Right. I mean, like I said, there's a number of different ways you can monetize, and I'm happy to go into detail on any of these, but just to briefly highlight them, you have display advertising, obviously.
Right.
You have in-text monetization, which Skimlinks falls into. You have classified and thread-based advertising, sponsored brand placement, affiliate networks and CPA networks, product sales, premium memberships, mobile monetization, and monetizing your outposts. So there's a lot of different ways you can go at it. Some communities might shun display advertising altogether. There might not be a visible ad on the page, but they might work with a company like Skimlinks to monetize the product links on their community and get a small percentage of that revenue. They might charge for premium memberships, charge members between $5 and $10 a month for extra features, more space on the community, different types of bells and whistles. And that might be enough to support the community and to perhaps encourage further investment in it without any display advertising whatsoever.
So it's really based on the community, what the target community actually is, on deciding on the approach.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider your audience, and it's important to consider your audience no matter what the solution you use. I have run technical communities like phpbbhacks.com and photoshopforums.com where you have web developers, web designers, very tech web savvy people. And then I've run communities like karateforums.com where there's a lot of web savviness, but they're more the general consumer web user. They're there for the martial arts. They're not as bothered by ads. And not to say that, my group, really, the web developers, are oversensitive, but, we are in a way. So, different audiences definitely have different levels of toleration for what they'll accept when they visit the community.
Speaking of that, on the ad side specifically, there are some people who immediately just turn their heads away from ads on a site. So how do you reverse this perception with ads on forums?
Well, I mean, it's tough. I think a lot of the perception comes from ads being untargeted, right? And because that's what you have to do. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, well, if I'm on a martial arts forum, I should only see martial arts ads. Right. Ideally, yeah, ideally. If there are enough advertisers to fill the inventory with martial arts related ads, of course, that's what I would do every day. But you have that remnant inventory. You have that extra space that you don't have those targeted ads for. So, how do you change the perception of ads? I think is to make ads more useful, make ads helpful. And that's something you can do with direct sale, selling directly to advertisers that your community appreciates. You can look at your forums and see what companies and products people are actually talking about and using. And then you can reach out to those companies and say, hey, my community is interested in this. Here's threads where they've talked about your products. Would you be interested in advertising with us? And of course, some would say like a Skimlinks-like solution is helpful as well in identifying product mentions. Premium memberships are a product of the community. People pay something and they get something in return. So it's not like an ad where they just show up, they see the ad, and they some people just don't like it. But advertising, is sometimes a necessary evil.
Of course. You've mentioned that over monetization can kill a forum. So you mentioned this earlier, talking about the finding that balance. But how important is it that people actually come to this realization, because there are major consequences involved otherwise?
Sure, and I think it's very difficult to toe that line. And what I encourage people to do, and what you have to do to monetize well, is to experiment. And sometimes that means you experiment and it doesn't work out well. You learn, you adjust. So I don't want to discourage people from kind of pushing the envelope and playing with something that makes them that excites them. But you always do need to keep in mind a positive member experience, kind of balance out the content that you have on the page, on a given page of your community versus the ad content, right? I don't want to say a specific percentage, but 15%, 20% maximum ad content sounds about right to me of the page, and as sort of a maximum. So you just keep in mind, the overall viewing space of the site, how much ads take up, how much actual other content takes up, and always try to be mindful of it. I know it's difficult. I struggle with that myself. Sometimes agonize over those very issues. But test, come back, listen to feedback, and make adjustments. Don't be set in any particular way.
Right. Testing and tracking are key to this as well.
Yeah, I think, and a lot of ad networks make it easy for you, right? Because they provide you with all the statistics, the impressions, the click-through rates, the CPMs. So you can get a sense of whether or not a particular method is really worth it. And then you can adjust and see how, what is most effective for you, which advertisers is most effective, which ad networks. You can use ad servers, ad optimization companies like PubMatic and Rubicon that, work to take all the ads you serve and kind of automatically serve the best ad for that particular page view. So there's a lot of great tools that we dive into in the book, and if the only limit is the time of your day, really, because there are so many tools out there.
Absolutely. Switching gears just slightly, you have a very successful hard copy book. So why did you decide to write an ebook this time? And I know that this is where Skimlinks comes in. So if you could talk about this relationship as well.
Sure. So, it's a really interesting project to me because like you said, my first book was traditionally published, Managing Online Forums. And about 9 months ago, Joe Stepnewski, who is one of the co-founders at Skimlinks, contacted me and with this idea to write an online forums monetization ebook or white paper. Really wasn't sure yet. And, what grabbed my attention about him reaching out to me, beyond the fact that we have a great relationship, I've worked with him for years and think, very highly of them, is that, he mentioned that they wanted me to mention their one and only competitor actually in the book, that they were going to pay me to write. So I thought that was, there's integrity there. And that was, a really interesting thing to say. So we talked about it. And as we discussed the project, what they wanted to do was to create an independent, valuable resource for people, not just your typical ebook or white paper, which, in my view, most of them tend to be a marketing gimmick, a teaser, a list generation tactic. Right. And really what Skimlinks did is what we agreed to is that I would write, I would go away. So they'd pay me, I'd go away for a while and write, and I'd come back, and that was the book. They had no feedback, they had no input, they had to put it out. So, a lot of companies wouldn't have given me that leeway to say, they would have wanted some control for their money. But Skimlinks didn't. And, I think that's a really respectful stance, and I appreciate that they had the faith in me. And the payoff in that is I believe that we created a really valuable resource. I was able to, I decided every word in there. I decided who wrote those words. I had contributions from Alethea Navarro, who's a CEO of Skimlinks, Todd Garland, who's a CEO of BuySellAds.com, and my friend Ted Sinzinski. All together, we kind of pooled our brains to create, a very highly detailed guide to monetizing online forums. And as someone who's been doing that for 12 years, there's nothing like this. As I wrote this book, it was a resource that I enjoyed, and I learned things, and I, forgot stuff that I had known. And so I'm going to be referring back to this book, and I really hope that it is helpful for people who do manage an online community, not necessarily as even a profession, though it'll help those people, but just help people to keep their communities online when money gets thin, when expenses are tight.
All right, well, it's great information, and we'll stop there for now so people will be sure to go out and read the book. Patrick, thank you so much for talking with us and sharing your insights on monetizing forums.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. The ebook is currently available at monetizingonlineforums.com. Reporting for WebPro News, I'm Abby Johnson.